Thank you, Alice. That just kind of threw me off for a second. It always. Hi, I'm Teddy. I'm an alcoholic. Really grateful to be here. Grateful to be alive and sober. And grateful to be here with y'all. And it's difficult because I come on this meeting. I will come on this meeting once in a while when I can. I generally work Tuesday nights, but if I'm home, I try to hop on, and I have since this meeting's conception. I believe somewhere in and around COVID. And I've gotten to listen to the likes of Ali and Alice and Calvin and I think I've never met him, but Ralph, I saw his name pop up in that meeting, which really started to make my heart palpitate because these are people that and I'm very careful nowadays of using, I don't use look up to, I use look to. These are people that I've looked to and I've listened to and have, whether they know me or not, have shaped or helped shaped with a lot of God's help, everything I think that Alice was trying to say. And by no means do I do any of this perfectly. It has just given me a design for living, more importantly, for when I'm making mistakes, because I didn't have that for a really long time. And I had one solution for that for a really long time. So I'm really grateful to be here with y'all and hopefully to share something of use to somebody. And if anything, the fact that I'm sitting here with you on a Tuesday night, being able to share something, and to not, talk about, I know, and I can get wrapped up and trapped in this idea that I see my name on a flyer, and I did a couple years ago. And thank God for some men in my life who made it very clear to me that you guys are not here for Teddy, right? You're here to listen to what God has done in my life, and that is it. And I hope that I mean remain in contact or connected to something like that, because that's the truth, right? Like I didn't do any of this. Like I took some actions and still to this day very begrudgingly. Like I just sometimes don't want to do it. Like I just, if you talk to my sponsor at times, like he reminds me often how much I am just like him. And I don't know at times whether to take that as an insult. I do get offended by it sometimes, but but at times when I see the walk that this man walks, and I'm almost like there's a deep sense of gratitude that he would say something like that to me, because I do want to be like him. I do want to walk like him. I want to walk like you, and I want to walk like a lot of the people that I know on this meeting. And that's really all that I was texting me in the morning, and I was actually right in the middle of my morning prayer meditation. And this line was just on my heart. And it often is, because it's really something simple that my sponsor really asked me a lot. Like, Teddy, what's your prayer life look like in regards to whatever it is I'm calling him about? And I don't know about you guys, but that is just not the answer I want. I want an answer. I just want him to say something that's going to fix whatever it is that I'm bringing to him. And he doesn't. And I'm glad he doesn't, because he's not, like, when I walk in here, I've learned very quickly that I am not able to manage my own life. And yet I'm looking to this human being who has just taken some actions like I have, and I want him to manage my life. And just like my family for so long, there were so many times that I would go to them for advice, and then they would give me this sage advice. And now I don't know if it was going to work or if it wasn't going to work, but I wouldn't follow it. And then I would blame them for why my life wasn't working out. Or once in a while, I would follow it and it wouldn't be something that I wanted to do, and I would fail at it, and I would blame them for what was going on in my life. And so when he asked me that, like, what's your prayer life look in regards to that? It's a valuable question. Like, what's going on? And not like the rote mechanical prayers that are so beautiful and can get taught to us, and that I can read in this book and many other books. But like, really, like, and that stuff's helpful. And hopefully I get to that, because that stuff was incredibly helpful when I'm new and I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, I just need to say something and talk to something, right? Other than myself and listening to this head that just wants to kill me. But more importantly today, like, am I in touch with that thing inside of me that it oftentimes is uncomfortable, and I don't know why? It has been very clear in my life recently that there is a level of dishonesty in one area of my life that is very important. And for the last 2 months, I have just been unable to sit still in my own home. And what's my prayer life look in regards to that? Am I being shy on this matter of prayer in regards to this? And the reason that I'm feeling that way is because I'm unwilling to take any of the action, which is actually what it asked me to do after that line, right? It says that better men than us are using this constantly, and that the right answers will come if I want them. The problem with the right answers is they often come when I'm really doing this work, especially in this step. But if I'm unwilling to take the actions because the answers aren't what I want, then I'm very quickly going to feel this restless, irritable, and discontentedness sober, even at 7 years sober. And I don't feel comfortable with myself, and I don't feel comfortable with my partner. And I just want to do things and get busy and stay busy, so hopefully it goes away, and it doesn't. And am I being shy on this matter of prayer? And I think it's important to be honest about that too, because I am not right now. I think when it comes to sponsorship, and I think even when it comes to my job, which for the first 3 years or 4 years of my sobriety was a source of contention. There's a man on this meeting who I love dearly, who I read inventory to about 3 years ago, who was in the industry that I'm in the restaurant industry. And I remember asking me questions like, Teddy, like, do they give you your schedule? Do they ever ask you to do anything that you really don't want to do? Like really, really don't want to do morally? Do you make a certain amount of money? And just kept asking these questions that the obvious answer to was yes. And he says, so aside from making you manager / owner of said business, what more would they have to do to make you happy? And since that, and along with a lot of prayer, I've seen, and let's be clear, like a lot of amends to these people at my jobs. My work life, I would like to think, has gotten a lot better over the last 3 years. And that is a gift. My family life and the relationships with my family, due to a lot of this, has gotten better. And I am not shy on this matter of prayer, because it doesn't mean that my family doesn't annoy me. It doesn't mean that I don't have a lot of ideas still to this very day, in this very moment, about what my sister should be doing for her mental health, what my other sister should be doing for her mental health, how my other siblings should be raising their children. It doesn't mean that I don't have a lot of ideas about how my son's mother should be parenting our son, when I am not a mother, I'm just the father. But it means that a lot of times I'm not shy on this matter of prayer, that those things have gotten better in my life. They just have. And it's been it has very little to do with me or any actions that I've taken. It's really just taking this action and shutting up and allowing God to do what he does, or it does, or she does, however it is that you pronounce it. But in this particular area of my life, it's been a struggle, because I love someone deeply, like I do. And I know how wonderful they are. I know that I would absolutely be crazy, to not see how beautiful they are inside and out. But yet the honest truth is that there are certain areas of a relationship in that manner that I just right now don't feel. And I've asked over and over and over again over the last year, if I'm being honest with you guys, for God to give me the right answer. And the right answer has really been, maybe it's time for you right now to go back to being a little bit alone. Maybe this isn't the right thing, and that's okay. And I'm so scared of what my family would think of me. I'm so scared of what her family would think of me. Because everybody loves her. You could spend 5 minutes with her and know how special she is. But sometimes those things just don't work. And I have been unwilling to take the action, because I'm a man of little courage in this area. I have a lot of courage that I can't even see sometimes, that my sponsor points out to me sometimes, that it's probably good that I don't see. But in this one area, I'm so afraid right now, and I've been very shy on this matter of prayer. And it's no wonder why, when Alice called me, that it was on my heart that morning. However, a living God has separated me from alcohol and other forms of it on May 12th of 2017. And I say that because I could not. And if anybody knows what alcoholism really is, I could not, for the life of me, get the thing off of me that was killing me for so long. And I tried. And there was a moment, a woman that I looked to, that's not here tonight, but I heard her say a couple months ago, and it's something that I had said, and it made me feel really good, that like I didn't surrender to alcohol or surrender to Alcoholics Anonymous when I walked in here 7 years ago. There was something that happened to me that's got surrendered. Like there was a lot of things going on within me that I just finally just was like, I don't have an idea of what it is I'm supposed to be doing. And for anybody in my life that's known me for the last 15 years prior to walking in here would have told you that my main problem is I had all the ideas about what was going to help me, and they never worked. And when I walked in here 7 years ago, and I was 3,000 miles away in a treatment center, I was in a room with two guys, one from Tennessee and one from Chicago. And these are not guys that, these are guys that I spent a lot of my life trying to impress. Just as I have to avoid the temptation to try to impress you tonight, because I want to. I want these people that I look to, that I love, that I admire, that have helped me so much, even by just simple speaker tapes. I want them to walk away here tonight and think, man, Teddy was great. I just want to be loved. And I just have to avoid that, right? And I've tried to impress guys like this my whole life. And something in me just knew that I was finished. And I didn't know if I was going to stay finished, but I knew that I needed to do something different. And the very first night in this room that we were sharing, when we were all going to bed, I got down on my knees in front of these guys and just started praying. And it wasn't like roomy. It wasn't Emmett Fox-ish. It was just very much like, God, thank you for getting me wherever I am right now. And please just keep me sober so that maybe something will happen. And I got up the next morning in front of these same guys and I did the same thing. And I kept just doing the same thing over and over and over again. And in about 3 months sober, when I was living out there, out of treatment for about a month, I had gotten a job that required about an hour and a half bus ride, 3 different buses. And anybody who knows me knows that I don't, my whole life, I'm a guy, and I'm still at times a guy of convenience. Like I just love, like if you were to ask me what I worship aside from God, I would tell you that if I was being honest with you, that the two gods in my life hopefully would be God, but I also worship this thing called convenience. Like I love comfort and convenience and in anything that's easy. And I remember one night sitting in this room in this little sober living house, and I was on my knees in prayer. And I love that our book describes in a couple different places how, like Bill's experience and in We Agnostics, it talks very clearly about how God's effect on them was sudden and profound, but to most men it comes gradually. And that was my experience, right? Like I didn't know that God had been coming gradually. All I knew is I was taking some simple action and was not being shy on this matter of prayer early because I didn't have much else. It's really easy to go up the mountain with a light backpack or nothing. And that's where I am when I'm early on in recovery for a guy like me. I show up 3,000 miles away from my family, 3,000 miles across the country from anything that I'm used to, with a small duffel bag that has literally nothing in it except for maybe a pair of pants, a jeans. I mean, literally a guy who was an ex-Mexican gangbanger who worked at this facility saw when I got there that I had nothing. And this is what changed me. Like he knew that I had nothing and was willing to bring me clothes. And I remember thinking that this is the kind of guy that takes the clothes off your back, and yet he's bringing me clothes. Like I started to see, and I only believe I started to see because I had started to pray. I started to ask God, like, if this is really the avenue that I have to take, right? Really, these 12 steps are the thing that are going to save my life, then please just show me someone that's out there that may have been changed by something in these steps. And I saw it very quickly. And I remember this night sitting in prayer in 3 months, and suddenly a thought crossed my mind. It's like, Teddy, you've been for the last 3 weeks taking an hour and a half bus ride to work, some nights an hour and a half bus ride back. And at this job, I encountered some people who were just kind and saw that I was trying to do right and were willing to give me a ride home out of their way. And suddenly the thought crossed my mind that, like, man, I don't do this. This must be something else doing this for me. And I was convinced at that moment, for a guy with 3 months, on a level that I had never been convinced of, that maybe you guys were telling the truth. Maybe there was something out here for me. And about a month later, I walk into this job, and, I don't know about you guys, I've been arrested at work like a couple times in my past. So I know what that looks like. And usually there's witnesses. The boss doesn't call you in the office by himself. They call you in with a couple people because they're going to have to sign some paperwork, and they're going to make sure if there anything goes off the rails, usually me threatening to hurt somebody or trying to run away, that there's at least witnesses to say what I did. And they didn't tell me anything about a cop or anybody there to arrest me. They very simply told me that there were some charges, eight of them to be exact, from Pennsylvania in 2012 that needed to be taken care of. And they wanted to know what I was going to do about it. And they gave me a week to figure it out, and they didn't fire me, and they kind of let me go back to work. And it's funny because if you want to know, like, about prayer and about what happens here, there was a woman who was really the reason I got the interview at the job, who didn't know me. She just replied to an email within 5 minutes. And it turns out that that woman was a sober member of AA for 20 years. And I found that out a couple weeks later going to a meeting when I shared about where I was currently working. And I approached her the next day and we started to talk. And she started to share with me, what it is we really do here in AA. And what I come to find 4 years later, because I'm a thick-headed person, I was actually at a podium and it hit me that woman was the reason why those people gave me a week to figure out what I was going to do. Because if I was really going to get and stay sober for good and for all, I was going to take this action. And if I didn't, I probably wasn't going to be sober very long. And I remember talking to my sponsor the next day, and he starts using words like spirituality and the spiritual world doesn't make sense. And I'm a guy that worships logic and reason and my ideas and my mind. And I know, and if I save up bail money, I'll be able to go back there in 6 months. And he just was very kind, but he said, Teddy, the spiritual world doesn't make sense. So you're either going to do this or you're not, but what do you want to do? And what's happened when you've been unwilling to take these actions? And so a couple of days later, I'm on a flight and I have 40 hours in my pocket. And I have like nothing, I'm calling up my kid's mom and she's not willing to show up unless I have, a picture that I'm going to send her from the courthouse because I don't show up for anything. And when I sent her that picture that morning, she showed up. And I remember walking into this jail cell because they arrested me on the spot once I turned myself in, and they had me in this holding cell with a guy. And I'm sure some of you would have the experience. This is not a guy you would feel comfortable praying in front of, getting on your knees in front of. And I got on my knees in this jail cell and I simply say, God, if this is where you want me to be, then I'll just do it. Please, whatever this is that I'm supposed to be doing, please give me the power to do it. And that kid asked me, he said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm praying to something. I don't know, man. I just heard it works and I know it works and I'm just going to do it. And that kid and I started to have a conversation in that jail cell until they called me out. And the bottom line is that story is I walked out of that courtroom a free man that day. And I walked in there not only with 8 serious charges, some of them domestic, which I didn't do, but I had written inventory by that time. And I had seen that I made 8 decisions that night that placed me in a position to be accused of that. I said that to the domestic, my public defender. And she didn't even know what I meant. I didn't know what I meant, but I just said, hey, I just want to leave here free if possible. And I walked out of there with a pretty hefty fine and some probation and treatment as time served, provided I complete treatment in California when I went back. But I also walked into that jail cell with $20,000 arrears in child support and no real consistent showing of ever really being willing to pay child support. When I walked out of that courtroom, my kid's mom looked at me with tears in her eyes and she said, I just, you don't know what I did for you today, but I just want to let you know that I don't know who's standing in front of me right now. But while you were in there, I went across the street and I absolved you of having to pay child support and have arrears for a little bit until you can get on your feet, because the guy standing in front of me is the guy I need to be a father to my son. And for the first time in my life, I had really seen and heard and felt what it is that all of you people have been telling me to do for so long. And my life has been on a different trajectory ever since. I mean, I went back to California and I continued to pray and not be shy on this matter of prayer. And it became very clear to me that every single one of my amends of the many, and I don't know about some of you, and I sponsor some guys, and I know that I'm amazed that there's only 30 or 40 on their list, but I didn't get sober till 36. And I'm the kind of guy that moves places and gets jobs and gets in relationships, and I hurt people, and my list is long. And there was a lot of people that were all on the East Coast, and it became very clear that there was only one thing to do, and I was to go. And I remember making moves and decisions and getting placed in Delaware. And before I left, I called my sponsor out there. I said, I probably should have talked to you about this, but I know in my heart this is what I have to do. And he didn't give me the sponsor answer where you should have called me first and we need a pros and cons list. He said very simply, Teddy, I know you've been praying. And I can tell by your actions that you've been praying. And he's like, so I trust that if you continue to do in Delaware what you've done here, you're going to be just fine. And since I've been in Delaware, my life has been incredibly wonderful, not all the time, but way better than anything I could have imagined 7 years ago. Way better. And I tell you all of that to say that I know it's important that my story matters a little bit of how I got from there to here. Like, how did I get from there to talking about a subject where I shouldn't be shy on this matter of prayer? Because at times early on, like 2-3 years, maybe I don't want to say necessarily 2-stepping, but there was times where I was just 3-stepping in here, where it was a lot of I'm powerless over alcohol. I need to make certain amends and I need to help as many guys as I can. And the one thing that was never really not done in my so far since I've been sober has been the 11th step. I mean, at times rigidly and mechanically, and just to be able to know that I did. I don't know how much value in it at sometimes there was, but I will say that if you're new in here, what's been important for me is, as a guy who played sports, is that sometimes it's okay for it to be mechanical early on. Because I've known through very difficult times in my sobriety, especially over the last 3 years, that I knew where to go. I knew the review to write. I knew the questions to answer. I knew who to send it to. I knew who to call. I knew what prayers to ask God for. And it wasn't just the 3rd-step prayer and the 7th-step prayer, because those prayers I don't really know. It's a real communication and a line with God, a communion, a devotion to Him. I really like sitting quiet and not just like trying to clear my mind so that I can get quiet, but also to get quiet so I can get in touch with what's going on inside. And that has been I remember calling Alice about 2 years ago almost, and my father had died. And before my father had died, about 2 years sober, I called him to make amends. And it was funny because ironic that my grandmother, who I had never met, was passing at that time. And I have siblings that my dad, my dad's other kids that I had never met. I've been friends with them on Facebook. And to be honest, until writing a 4-step, I had very little interest in meeting these people. I was jealous of them. I was envious of them. I thought they had a better life than me. I thought my dad loved them more than me. And so when he gave me the opportunity to come down to spend some time with them before my grandma died, I obviously owed this woman an amends. And there was a lot of prayer involved with, how do I approach this woman who's on her death? What do I say to this woman who, when being honest with the sponsor, it was very clear. Like, I didn't really do much to her except for maybe not be so, like, I could have shown more effort. I could have shown more interest. But I sat down with this woman and I just made an amends. And I just told her I could have been a better grandson. I could have reached out, and I could have, I could have, and I was wrong for that. And there's anything I can do in the time that we have left, I'd be more than willing to do. And this woman shed a tear and said, "You did it. Thank you for coming, but I'd appreciate it if you left my room." Because she wanted to die a proud woman. She didn't want us there. And in that time, I got to meet my siblings, and I got to make an approach to my dad. And my dad is alcoholic, and he had started drinking there. And so the amends was just very simple and very general, and just, he wanted me to be a son. And I did my best over a couple of years while this man's in active alcoholism to be his son when he's always on the road. In October of 2022, my dad asked me to come down to Florida to spend some time with him. And I could only spend about 38 hours. And while I was there, I did a lot of praying on, like, what do I do? I know my dad's drinking. I know he's trying to hide it. What do I do? How do I be helpful? How do I be useful? And it was very clear, just be honest. And so we talked. And I remember at one point I saw him, we went to Walmart, and he started buying. I don't even know why I'm telling you this story, except for it does. Like, I wasn't shy on this matter of prayer with my father. And it was like, just be honest with this man. And he was buying Listerine. And I just kind of said, I'm going to let this slide for a second. And so we got back to the house that night and we started talking. I said, Dad, you don't have to hide your drinking. I said, if there's anybody in your life right now that understands what you're going through, it's the guy sitting in front of you. And I love you. And I'm never going to tell you not to, because I know you can't not do it. I said, so I would ask, just let's do it safely, and let's go out and get you some booze if that's really what you want to do, and let's just talk. And in that week that I got to spend there, again, I was supposed to leave within 36 hours, and he was selling the house, and he had to get a bunch of things done. And I heard this woman. I don't know if you know alcoholism, like trying to watch a guy not drink so he can get through this appointment so he can go to drink. He's not present for what this woman is telling him. And I'm listening to this woman, and I'm looking at my dad, and I know he has no idea what this woman just said to him. And so when she left, I said, Dad, do you need me to stay for a week? And I'm a guy, again, like I told you, I love convenience and I love comfort and I love money and I love to be comfortable. And if there's just enough of this, and I got to get back to work. And I went into my room and I got quiet for 5 minutes, and it was clear that you need to be here for your dad. And so I sat and I called my job and I said, I'll be back next week. And I got to have some conversations about alcoholism with my dad. And I got to have some conversations about what a father would do, and what I've tried to do, and what our relationship looks like, and how much I love him. And I don't really care. I just want to be able to spend time with him. And lo and behold, that was the last time I got to see him alive. Thank God for not being shy on this matter of prayer. And in that time, I hadn't seen my mom in 3 years because of COVID. She lives in Florida too, and she's about an hour away from my dad. And I woke up one morning running late because I was supposed to leave on Thursday. And I woke up one morning running late to get to the airport, and I took a little drive to the Wawa, and I got quiet in the car, and it crossed my mind that was my mom's birthday that day. And so I got back home and I switched my flight to Friday, and I called my mom and said, hey, I love you. Can I take you out to dinner tonight? I'm going to stay an extra night. And I got to spend some time with my mom. And over the course of my dad passed away that year, literally a couple months later. I remember talking to Alice. There were some money issues, and there were some will issues, and there were some, my siblings had some ideas. And the whole time, from not being shy on this matter of prayer, I got to be there for my siblings. And I got to be the older brother because I'm the oldest. And it was funny because I can get caught up in a lot of things. And thank God for someone who loves me that got me to slow down. And they said, you're missing all of this. These kids don't care about money, Teddy. They just want you to know. They want to know what do you think they should do? And I got to be there for them. And I got to go down a couple months later and take care of my dad's stuff at the house. And when he passed away, my little sister, the youngest one, whose mother died of alcoholism, now her father just died of alcoholism, and she is living in the state of Rhode Island around his wife, his last wife, and her kids who don't really like her. They don't really want anything to do with her, and she's in the world alone. And I remember after a couple months of just sitting, it started to come to me during meditation, like, what does a good brother do? Like, what does a good brother do to be available for her? And it said, just start reaching out to her. So I started reaching out to this girl. And I started to show her that I loved her. And I started to show her that there's people here that care about her. And she started to come visit. She came and visited last July, and she came and visited and spent 2 weeks with us at Christmas, and she lost her job here. She lost her job while she was here. And she ended up staying an extra week. And she got to come to a meeting with me, and she got to see me talk, which I really didn't want her to, but she wanted to come. And I remember her asking me a lot of times, like, what it is that I do. And I say, well, I just, I do a lot of this, and I sponsor some guys, and I pray and meditate, and I take my quiet. And she saw me take some quiet time in the morning. And on my birthday a couple months ago, I got this card from my sister. And in it, she writes, Dear Teddy, thank you so much for being present in my life. I've come out of my shell a lot more since we've become closer, for better or for worse, she said. And I look at life a lot more intentionally now. I find myself a lot more grateful for the little blessings in my life, people's stories, and most of all for you. And P.S., I often think about the hell you had to go through to get to where you're at now. And I am not religious, but I thank whatever higher power that kept you protected. And I thank you for having the strength to access it. And that's what happens when we're not shy on this matter of prayer. My sister got to experience a power. She has a mental illness. She got to experience a power that has transformed my life by not being shy on this matter of prayer, by knowing that all of the people on this meeting, most of you that I know who have been a better man or a better woman for longer than I have, were using it constantly long before I got here, and have started and consistently shown me how. And so the questions that I would like to leave you with tonight is like, how often am I being shy on this matter of prayer when I'm walking through my day? It came to me a couple months ago that our book says that we say many times each day that his will, not mine, be done. And it occurred to me, how many times am I going through my day that I'm unaware that if I'm even really breathing? Right? Like, I know that I'm breathing. Like, I can't change what God does, which means we breathe, right? Like, I just breathe in and out. It happens until I drop. But like, how many times at work, especially in a fast-paced environment, am I breathing? Am I aware and acknowledging that there is breath going into my lungs and out of my lungs, and slowing down and to know that God is always there? How many times am I asking myself, will God go with me when I'm about to do this thing that I know I shouldn't do? And I know there's some men in this room and maybe some women struggle, but how many times am I asking God to go with me, or being shy on this matter of prayer when I'm staring at my phone for hours or minutes, seeking validation in a way that I really shouldn't be seeking it, that's not really doing anything but killing my spirit? And that is something that's come up over the last 2 years, because I'd much rather live in a fantasy world than live in the world and the reality that God has presented to me right here and right now. How often am I being shy on this matter of prayer? How often am I writing reviews honestly, and not just from the mind and like just show them that I'm aware of my dishonesty, but like how often, like last night I wrote one that came from my heart, and when I was done writing it and reread it, I could see that the selfishness and dishonesty that's not only plaguing me, but plaguing my partner right now is killing both of us. How often am I going to God with that? How often am I going to God with my sex life, which most of us don't ever want to talk about? My sponsor suggested that I prayed her, and I was like, prayed her and what? Yet this most intimate relationship in my life that has allowed the relationship that I have with all of you, yet I'm afraid to go to him about this intimacy. I'm afraid to be intimate in that matter. And the only thing that I can tell you is that 7 years ago, I could not even be conscious of that. Like, that's not even something that comes in my mind. I think that I'm just out here living. And what this step has shown me, especially this line in the book, and all the valuable and definite suggestions they give me throughout to get to that place, has allowed me to just get busy living and to have a place to go with it, and to know that the only power is God, and I need to find him now and now and now. And how often am I doing that? And so I just want to thank you all for allowing me to be here. God bless you, and God bless your families, and God bless AA. Thank you.
You're still muted, my friend.
Does that work? Can you hear me now? Okay. Spencer, alcoholic. Thanks so much, Eddie, for your honesty. It was just definitely, could relate to a lot of what you're saying. My question that I have is, and I think this came up because you were, emphasizing this idea that, in every moment, to find our presence, and I struggle with that a lot. And this may be silly just because, it's like, am I doing this right? But the prayer, what are the tools that maybe you can use to focus your prayers? Because one thing that I find, I'm doing my prayer in the morning, doing my prayer in the evening, and I try to check in throughout the day when I can. But when I pray, I find that like the floodgates open, and I want to say every prayer that I know at once in my mind. Like I'm trying to say the serenity prayer, and I'm like interrupting myself doing, whatever else. And I have a really hard time sometimes just focusing that. And I guess the question is there, have you dealt with that, and how would you recommend focusing prayer?
Thank you, Spencer.
Yeah, I definitely dealt with that, Spencer, and thanks for that question. Yeah, it's funny. We were joking with Alice last week about like I won't have the answers to any of these questions. I don't know. I think the thing that's helped me the most is at times I think saying those prayers in the book, and our book gives us so many prayers, and I think it's really helpful to get me started talking to God in a different way, right? Not asking for the things that I want in the world, but asking how I can be the things that he needs me to be in the world. But what helped me, I think, and I think I tried to touch on this a little bit. I don't really remember what I said, but it's a lot of times 3 years ago was really just get quiet in prayer. And so like if you pray on your knees, like I pray on my knees in the morning, and then I have meditation time afterwards. A lot of times I'm on my knees in the morning now. I may say some prayers, but I try to get quiet and really try to experience what it is I'm feeling. And if I'm writing nightly reviews out, and I'm 10-stepping with sponsors, and I've got some unmade amends, and I'm sponsoring some other guys, and I may even be going to meetings, there's a lot of material that I can be going to God with, right? Like for me, I went to a meeting before I got here tonight because it's always, if I can get to a meeting where I'm not talking, then I just want to go listen. And it wasn't like a group of folks that I would, really go sit in a meeting with, but I had to be open. Like I just want to, am I asking God to be open to hearing something? So I would say one thing is to get quiet maybe, and just not like focus so much on words, and just really, what are you feeling? Like, what am I feeling right now? If I'm uneasy, why am I uneasy? And the last thing I'll leave you with, and that, where that really opened up for me is I remember one morning before going to my one home group. I don't know where this prayer came from, but it said, all I said was, God, please open up my eyes so that I can see you. Please open up my ears so that I can hear you. And please open up my heart so that I can hear you, feel you today. And I went to the meeting, and I had this experience of a friend of mine who had just lost his dad. And this guy sat next to him who didn't know that he had lost his dad, didn't know him at all. And during the meeting, he started sharing about this experience he had with losing his dad. And I know me, I'm in meetings a lot waiting for me to say something. And I wasn't that day. And I think it was because of that prayer. And the only reason that prayer came to me is because I stopped trying to say prayers, and I tried to let the prayer come to me, if that makes any sense.
Thank you, Teddy. Ralph?
My name is Ralph White. I'm an alcoholic. Teddy, thank you. What a powerful and insightful share. I'm gonna ask you a different Q&A than the typical Q&A. So I'm probably gonna overstep. And if so, just, blow it off, feel free. But I need you to just let everybody else go because I heard you. And, me and you can talk for a minute. How scared are you? And what's going on and how you're addressing the fear?
Terrified, Ralph. I'm not, yeah, the one thing that I'm grateful for is just not being afraid to be honest. Part of that is because maybe I'll never see some of y'all. I hope I get to see most of y'all, but um, terrified. I mean, and it's funny because I've written inventory. I wrote inventory, like a serious inventory about a year ago, where I shared it with 3 men, my sponsor and 2 other guys that I trust a lot, and to go to retreat and shared some of the same stuff a few months later. And a lot of what was coming up, and I'll just try to be, a lot of what was coming up was some things that we watch on our phone that are absolutely no way good for us. And so I get trapped into that's got to be the thing. And so we went away to San Francisco for a wedding. And in this time, she found this inventory and read it. And so I came home from one night from doing something like this, feeling Mr. Spiritual. And I walk into this girl is crushed because she read this inventory. And so we had an honest conversation. And for 2 or 3 months, I'm just, I'm abstinent from it and I feel better. But the way I see her is not changing. The way I see her in all other ways except for physically is not changing. And so we went on a road trip. And again, it was it was beautiful. Like I can't imagine going on a trip like that with somebody for that long in a car with that many miles and not wanting to at some point kill each other. And we didn't have that. But the physical side of that is just, it's not there. And so I've been talking to my sponsor a lot about this and written some more inventory. And what he has been clear with, he's like, maybe the stuff on your phone has to be addressed at some point. He said, but let's ask some questions. And he asked me some questions about it and how much time I'm losing. Is my work life being affected? Sponsee life, AA life? And a lot of the answer to those questions was no. Like I'm not like sitting in my room, whatever. Let's just end it with that. And he said, it's okay to not be there with somebody anymore. What's not okay is to continue to be dishonest about it. And so to the answer to your question, aside from that, and that conversation happened last week, and I just feel like every night it's like I need to have this conversation with her, and every night I'm terrified of having that conversation because I don't want to hurt her. So.
Mr. White,
Say it again, Alice.
Mr. White,
Yeah, because Teddy, okay, we going all outside the confines, but it feels like a second step problem. It feels like this one is too big for God, right? So what do we do with a second step problem? Take it to the third step. Which one is that one? Either God is what?
He's everything or he's nothing.
And what is what? My choice. What are you choosing tonight, my brother?
God is everything.
I'm out.
Thank you, Ralph.
love you, Ralph.
Love you, Ralph.
Okay, we all just got something out of that.
Mm.
I have a New York City public school education, so I'm going to just say that I'm so happy you're here. Please come in.
Oh, thank you. I'm an alcoholic and my name's Siobhan. Thank you guys so much. Ellie and all Fellowship of the Spirit crew, thank you for continuing to have these meetings. I'm at Waypoint, which for those of you south of the border, is a mental health hospital in Ontario, just north of Toronto. So I got to hop on the iPad. Teddy, my question is sparked from your 3-stepping time, because I feel like I've done that a lot throughout my time, the 1, 9, 12 step, and not doing all the rest in between very well. So when did you start noticing the shift between the 3-stepping to fully committing yourself to the 12 steps again as I need to recommit myself?
When did I really fully commit myself again? I would say, I mean, obviously based on what Ralph and I just talked about, I don't know if I could say I fully committed myself. If I'm being honest, Siobhan. I don't know. I would say that again, and I think I misspoke a little bit. I guess I would say more four-stepping, because again, like I've never really stopped praying and meditating, and I don't know what I was getting from it sometimes, because I think sometimes it was just like an act of doing something that I was afraid, like no one sees it, right? I think that's like, I know when I'm sponsoring guys, like I know I can tell when they're really not doing this in the morning, because they're a mile a minute. Like it's like, man, are you going to let me answer the 14 questions you just asked me? Right. So I was never really stopping doing that, but I would say like not 10-stepping, like more of like jumping into the action and then calling Brad about it later, which is my sponsor's name, not real, like not a real 10-step, not pausing and asking and turning and watching. And I would say that probably changed more about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And what changed it was reapproaching a girl for the third time that I worked with for an amends. And upon approaching her this third time, before I could even get a word out of my mouth, she said, Teddy, I just want to ask, is this going to be another one of those times where you apologize and then you continue doing the same thing? And this girl's not she's just a girl I work with. And I was just, I said, I was floored. And I just remember thinking like, man, I really have to continue to invite God into my life every day. And then not just like, later on in this, in their big book, it gives us these definite and valuable suggestions. And one of my favorite lines I always point out to guys is, and I'm going to probably botch exactly what it says, but it says, we usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer that we be shown all through the day what our next step is to be. So after I've just written nightly reviews and reflected in the morning and prayed and got quiet and read some really cool books and done all this stuff and considered my plans for the day, the last prayer I'm asking God is, please show me all throughout the day what my next step is to be from you. Which means like all throughout the day, I should be asking God what my next step is. And I'm not making every single decision saying that. I wish I could tell you the truth, but I would say probably 2 years ago, it was a commitment to really like try to make be mindful of how many times am I talking to God throughout the day? How many times am I willing to pick up the phone? How many times am I willing to start using words and associate them with the way I'm behaving? And how many times am I willing to 10-step and 11-step something with a review, where if it's coming up 3 or 4 times, am I sitting down and writing inventory on it and being willing to be honest about that inventory? So, and I don't know, from guys I listen to or women I listen to, sometimes I think that sways a little bit. I think people go through ebbs and flows, and hopefully the ebbs aren't too long. So that's it.
Thank you.
Hopefully that makes sense.
Harmony. And I want to say, I think we have time for maybe one other, but Ebony, you may be closing us out. Please come on in. Harmony.
Hi, Harmony Alcoholic. Thank you, Teddy. That was amazing. Really good, honest share. Enjoyed that a lot. Okay, I just have 2 quick questions. So when Alice introduced you, she said that you were part of a movement that was carrying the message. And I was just kind of interested, maybe you could expand on what that's looking like. And then, I just was wondering, like, one of the lines that came to mind for me for some reason when you were speaking was common sense becomes uncommon sense. And I was just wondering if you could expand on that at all as it pertains to you and your program. Thank you.
Yeah, I could talk about that all day. I'm just like, I don't know if you guys, I'm a big Don P guy. And so like, I'm a storyteller, and I think Ralph's kind of the same. I'm just not like this. The best story I have is before I got sober this time, I had managed to stay sober for a year, ended up drinking again because I wasn't willing to do stuff. I ended up in Florida for a week, and I stumbled upon this 12-step house with the owner of this house in Fort Lauderdale. And I was sitting next to him, and this man walked in and for an hour spoke about, I don't know what step, but I just remember thinking I'd never heard anybody talk about that, in the 12 steps in that way. And I asked him, I said, man, that's the kind of guy you get to sponsor you. And he said, if you walk up to him right now, he'll sponsor you. And I said, no, not me. Like like, if you're ready to do this stuff, that's the kind of guy you get to sponsor you. And I just remember one of the many experiences I had in California, I was listening to some speaker tapes before I would go to bed. And I was writing a second inventory, and I was just kind of slacking on it. And I heard this guy, and I was like, oh, that's the guy I heard almost a year ago. And so with that, I just started to listen. And my sponsorship line is we're just very big on current, like be current, like, because I don't have the experience of going through the steps and walking through sobriety perfect after one inventory and one fifth step and 5 amends. Like, I just don't. I have a kid's mom who suffered under, the weight of alcoholism for years. Like, I didn't see my son for 6 years, except for once at my grandmother's funeral. And I was told not even to talk to him that much because he doesn't know who I am. And so to think that, like, that 18 months sober, that I sat down with her on an approach, she didn't really want to hear much because she knew what I did. She just wanted to be very general and wanted me to do what she wanted me to do. And I've had multiple times of, like, having to reapproach those amends when things have come up. So I would say I've just been fortunate to move to a place where there was guys reading the big book and talking about current stuff before I got here, and I just got lumped in with them. And I've been able to kind of help get some more people that are out of the area that talk more about current stuff. And as far as uncommon sense becomes uncommon sense, I think in regards to prayer, my experience has been that it has started to become from me. Like, if you've ever heard Peter or Ralph or Alice or anybody that's on this meeting talk, Peter always says it becomes a part of who I be, right? And I would hear that, and that sounds really cool from a podium when I don't know what it really means. But over the last couple of years, I've started to understand, like, things have happened for me that I did not do. A guy at work 3 years ago, because he was unwilling to take the direction I was supposed to be giving him, called me, and we're just going to, for the sake of the meeting, called me the P word. And if you're a man in here, you know what I'm talking about. And I don't care how sober I am, you just don't call me that. And I stood up as he walked away, and I sat down. And I can't tell you when I sat down. I can tell you that 2 minutes later, I realized that I had sat down. And that was wild to me, because I didn't know who sat me down except for God. Like, God sat me down and let me know, like, this is not the time. Because I was going through, like, what I'm going to do to him when I walk in there. How I don't need this job, how I can get another job, how I have enough money. I don't know about you. Like, I was like 3 weeks ahead of where I was sitting in that moment. So common sense becomes uncommon sense has really been doing a lot of things that don't make sense to me still. Like, I don't always want to make amends to somebody for the third time. I've heard old timers say, if you've made amends to them, you just change the behavior. And I don't have the power to change me. The only thing that has the power to change me is continual experiences with God. And I get that by taking the actions in these steps. So that's it.
Teddy, will you